I am Marla. Just Marla, no fancy titles, though I used to be Miss Marla to a room full of 5-year-olds who'd hug my knees and smudge paint on my jeans. Teaching kindergarten was my world. Those tiny humans with their wide eyes and wild imaginations lit me up. I'd spend hours crafting lessons, turning math into treasure hunts and stories into puppet shows. It wasn't just a job, it was my heartbeat. But my husband, Vernon, and his mother, Doreen, never saw it that way. To them, I was playing house, not building futures. "When are you getting a real career?" Vernon would ask, his voice sharp as a paper cut. Doreen would nod, her lips pursed like she'd bitten a lemon, muttering about proper roles for a wife. My pregnancy only made it worse. Suddenly, I was fragile, my dreams dismissed as hormonal whims. They wanted me home, quiet, under their thumb, raising a daughter to fit their mold. My sister-in-law, Patsy, and her husband, Elton, were the golden ones. Patsy's law degree and Elton's car dealership were real successes, worthy of Doreen's fawning. Me? I was the odd piece in their perfect puzzle, always nudged to conform. I never imagined my phone would buzz with a message that could change everything, but it did, right when I needed it most. Before I tell you how that text flipped my world, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe. You'll want to see how this ends. That buzz came late one night, after another dinner where Vernon and Doreen planned my life like I wasn't there. I'd stepped away from teaching when I got pregnant, not because I wanted to, but because Vernon insisted it was too much for me. "You're emotional, Marla," he'd say, as if my passion was a flaw. Doreen backed him, her voice syrupy but cold, suggesting I focus on family duties. I felt like I was shrinking, my spark dimming under their weight. But I'd been building something in secret, something they'd never understand, a daycare center, born from my love for kids and my refusal to let go of who I was. It started small in the back of my mind when I realized I couldn't just be Vernon's wife or Doreen's pawn. I'd always dreamed of a place where kids could learn through play, where parents felt safe leaving their little ones. I'd saved every penny from teaching, stashed it in an account Vernon didn't know about. Nights when he thought I was scrolling recipes, I was researching permits, sketching floor plans. I found a rundown community center, leased it quietly, and poured my heart into it. I named it Sprout Haven, a nod to the kids who'd grow there. By the time I was 6 months pregnant, it was ready to open, 10 kids enrolled, a waiting list forming. I told no one, not even my best friend Tilda, because I knew Vernon would shut it down, call it reckless. Doreen would say it was selfish, risking the baby's stability. But Sprout Haven was my lifeline, proof I was more than their version of me. That text, though, it was from my lawyer, Quincy, about a deal that could make Sprout Haven a household name. A national childcare chain wanted to partner, offering funds to expand, maybe even franchise. It was my ticket to independence, to giving my daughter, who I'd name Hazel, a life free from their control. But first I had to survive the annual family dinner at Doreen's, where I knew they'd try to tighten their grip. I rubbed my belly, feeling Hazel kick, and promised her we'd make it through. I wasn't just fighting for me anymore. Giving my daughter, Hazel, a life where she could dream big, unbound by Vernon and Doreen's suffocating rules. But to understand why that text meant so much, you need to know how invisible I'd been in their world. Growing up, I was the odd one in my family, always chasing ideas they couldn't grasp. I remember being 12, winning a state art contest for a mural I painted at school. Bright colors, kids holding hands under a big sun. I rushed home, certificate clutched tight, expecting my parents to cheer. Instead, my dad, Harlan, barely looked up from his paper. "That's nice, Marla," he said, then turned to my brother, Floyd, to gush about his soccer goal. My mom, Glenda, was too busy framing Floyd's trophy to notice. Patsy, already a teen, got endless praise for her debate team wins. Me? My mural was cute. My passion a hobby they assumed I'd outgrow. It didn't stop there. In college, I studied early childhood education, pouring my heart into projects like a literacy program for low-income kids. I'd stay up late, typing proposals, meeting with local schools. When I got it funded, $10,000 from a community grant, I called home, buzzing with pride. Glenda answered, distracted, saying, "Oh, that's sweet, Marla, but did you hear Patsy passed her bar exam?" Floyd's promotion to bank manager was the real headline. My grant was a footnote. At family gatherings, they'd parade Floyd's suits and Patsy's legal briefs, while my stories about kids learning to read were met with polite nods, then quick subject changes. I'd sit there smiling, feeling like a ghost at my own table. Even after I married Vernon, it was the same. My first year teaching kindergarten, I had a student, little Otis, who barely spoke. I worked with him daily using songs and games until he read his first book aloud. I was over the moon, told Vernon at dinner. He shrugged, said, "Sounds like babysitting," and asked if I'd iron his shirts. Doreen, visiting, chimed in, "Teaching's fine, dear, but Patsy's arguing cases in court." I'd bite my lip, hiding the sting. Every milestone, my Teacher of the Year award, my parent workshops, was overshadowed. Floyd's new branch opening, Patsy's big settlement, Elton's dealership expansion, those were the victories they toasted. My classroom, my kids, my heart, just noise to them. That invisibility built a quiet fire in me. I started saving, hiding cash from lesson plans I sold online, knowing I'd need it to break free. Vernon thought I was nesting when I'd slip away to run errands, but I was meeting with a realtor, scouting spaces for Sprout Haven. I'd drive past that old community center, picturing it filled with laughter, kids painting murals like I once did. My family's dismissal taught me to keep my dreams close, to protect them from their judgment. They didn't see me, but I saw myself, clearer every day. That text from Quincy wasn't just about a deal. It was proof I'd built something undeniable, something they couldn't ignore. But the family dinner loomed, and I knew they'd try to dim my light again. I touched my belly, feeling Hazel's kick, and whispered, "We'll show them, baby girl." The fire in me sparked the night I realized I couldn't let Vernon and Doreen define me or Hazel. It was a quiet evening, maybe 7 months ago, when I was folding onesies in our dim living room. Vernon was out with Elton, probably boasting about car sales, and Doreen had just left after another lecture about settling down properly. I sat there, hands on my belly, feeling Hazel wiggle, and it hit me like a lightning bolt. I wasn't just a wife or a vessel for their legacy. I was still Marla, the woman who turned shy kids into storytellers, who saw potential where others saw chaos. That's when Sprout Haven went from a daydream to a mission. I didn't want Hazel growing up under their shadow, taught to shrink like I'd been. I wanted her to see a mom who built something real, something hers. Starting Sprout Haven was like climbing a mountain in flip-flops. I had my teaching savings, $12,000, scraped together over years. But it wasn't enough. The community center's lease was cheap, $800 a month, but it needed paint, furniture, toys, and safety upgrades. I sold lesson plans online, stayed up past midnight answering parent emails, and took out a small loan under the table from Tilda's cousin Barney, who believed in me. Vernon thought I was at prenatal yoga when I was meeting contractors hauling secondhand tables in a borrowed van. Every step felt like defiance, like carving out a piece of myself they couldn't touch. I hired 2 teachers, Myrna and Leland, both kind-hearted misfits like me, who loved kids as much as I did. We painted walls with sunflowers, built a reading nook, and stocked shelves with books I'd hunted down at thrift stores. The first month was brutal. Only 6 kids enrolled, and I was bleeding cash on utilities and snacks. Parents were skeptical. Why trust a nobody's daycare? I'd lie awake, panicking, wondering if Vernon was right, if I was reckless. But then Myrna suggested open houses where we'd play music and let kids paint. Word spread. By month 3 we had 20 kids, then 30. A local blog, run by a mom named Fern, called Sprout Haven, a hidden gem. I cried reading that, hiding in the bathroom so Vernon wouldn't see. I kept it secret, telling him I was volunteering to explain my absences. Doreen sniffed, said it was nice but not sustainable. I smiled, knowing we had a waiting list of 15 families. By the time Quincy's text came, Sprout Haven was thriving. 40 kids, 3 more staff, and a reputation that reached beyond our town. The national chain, Bright Beginnings, saw Fern's blog and scouted us. They wanted to partner, offering $200,000 to scale up with talks of franchising. It was my aha moment, proof I'd built something bigger than their doubts. But keeping it hidden took a toll. I'd sneak calls with Quincy in the car, heart racing, terrified Vernon would find out. He'd started noticing my moods, saying I was distant, blaming hormones. Doreen agreed, suggesting I see a therapist to stabilize. I'd nod, hiding my grin, knowing Sprout Haven was my therapy, my rebellion. Hazel's kicks reminded me why I fought. The dinner was tomorrow, and I'd have to face them, pretending I was still their Marla. But I wasn't. I was a woman with a secret empire, ready to break free. The morning of Doreen's annual family dinner felt like walking into a storm with a paper umbrella. I stood in our bedroom, 7 months pregnant, tugging on a navy dress that barely fit over my belly. Vernon was already downstairs, barking about being late, as if I could move faster with Hazel pressing on my spine. My phone sat on the dresser, Quincy's text still glowing in my mind. Bright Beginnings wanted to meet next week to finalize the $200,000 deal. It could mean Sprout Haven expanding to 3 new locations, maybe more. It was my way out, a future where Hazel and I wouldn't need Vernon's paycheck or Doreen's approval. But tonight, I had to play the part. Meek Marla, the unstable wife who'd traded her classroom for their version of duty. I smoothed my dress, whispered to Hazel, "Just a few hours, baby girl," and braced for the gauntlet. Doreen's dinners were less about food and more about control. Her dining room, with its polished oak table and stiff chairs, was a stage for her to remind everyone who held the reins. Vernon worshipped her, always nodding like a kid seeking her gold star. Patsy and Elton would be there, smug as ever, ready to flaunt their latest wins. Floyd and his wife, Irma, would show up with stories of their perfect kids, while I'd be expected to sit quietly, maybe praised for finally settling. I'd been dreading this since last year, when Doreen suggested I rest instead of teaching, as if my job was a hobby I'd outgrown. Now, with Sprout Haven thriving in secret, the stakes were higher. If they sensed I was pulling away, they'd tighten their grip, especially Vernon, who'd been watching me lately, asking why I seemed off. I spent the day preparing not for the dinner, but for survival. I packed a small bag, phone charger, wallet, keys stashed in my car just in case things went south. Tilda texted, offering to be my emergency call if I needed an out. I thanked her but said I'd manage. I had to face this, not just for me, but for Hazel, to prove I could stand tall before we broke free. By afternoon I was in the kitchen, reheating the casserole I'd made, a bland recipe Doreen approved of, nothing too adventurous. Vernon paced, checking his watch, muttering about impressing his mother. "Don't embarrass me, Marla," he said, eyeing my dress. "You look tired, try to smile." I bit my tongue, nodding, while my mind screamed about the 40 kids at Sprout Haven who'd hugged me yesterday. As we drove to Doreen's, the air in the car was thick. Vernon rambled about Elton's new dealership lot, not asking me a single question. I stared out the window, picturing Sprout Haven's sunflower walls, Myrna reading to the kids, Leland leading a sing-along. That world felt a million miles from Doreen's crystal chandelier and Vernon's cold stare. My hand rested on my belly, Hazel's kicks grounding me. The deal with Bright Beginnings was my lifeline, but tonight I had to hide it, play small and endure their judgment. We pulled into Doreen's driveway, her perfect lawn mocking my churning gut. I took a deep breath, stepped out and walked toward the door, knowing this dinner could change everything. Or break me. Doreen's front door opened and her perfume hit me like a wall. Floral, overpowering, just like her. She stood there in a peach pantsuit, her smile tight as a drum. "Marla, dear, you're glowing," she said, her eyes flicking to my belly, not my face. It wasn't a compliment, it was a reminder I was a vessel for her grandchild, nothing more. Vernon brushed past, already calling for Patsy, while I shuffled in, clutching my casserole dish like a shield. The dining room was a museum of their egos. Framed photos of Patsy's law firm, Elton's dealership ribbon cutting, Floyd's bank awards. No trace of my murals or teaching plaques, not that I expected it. Everyone was already seated. Patsy in a sharp blazer, Elton with his slick grin, Floyd and Irma whispering about their son's violin recital. I took my spot next to Vernon, my chair creaking under the weight of their stares. The meal started with Doreen's usual toast, praising family strength and proper priorities. Her eyes lingered on me, a silent jab. Then the questions came, sharp and predictable. Patsy leaned in, sipping her wine. "Marla, still volunteering at that little daycare thing?" Her tone dripped with pity, as if I was dabbling in a craft project. I nodded, mumbling about helping out, my heart pounding. Vernon cut in, "She's just keeping busy until the baby comes. Hormones, you know." He chuckled, and Elton laughed too, loud and fake. Doreen tilted her head, her voice syrupy. "It's sweet, Marla, but you must be exhausted. Pregnancy's no time for extra stress." I forced a smile, my casserole untouched, while Hazel kicked hard like she felt the insult too. Floyd changed the subject to his bank's new branch, and the table lit up. Doreen gushing, Patsy boasting about a case she'd won. I sat there, invisible again, picking at my food. Then Irma, trying to be kind, asked, "Marla, any plans for after the baby? Back to teaching, maybe?" It was innocent, but Vernon snorted. "She's done with that. Too much chaos for her now." Doreen nodded, adding, "A mother's place is at home, especially with a newborn, you'll see, dear." My throat tightened. I wanted to scream about Sprout Haven, about the 40 kids, the waiting list, Quincy's deal, but I swallowed it, knowing they'd twist it into proof I was unstable. Instead I said softly, "I'll figure it out." Vernon patted my hand, like I was a child, and moved on to Elton's new car lot. The condescension kept coming. Patsy mentioned her pro bono work, giving back, and Doreen beamed, saying, "That's real impact, not just playing with kids." Elton teased, "Marla, you could sell crafts or something, keep it simple." Every word was a needle poking at my worth. I gripped my glass, water trembling, picturing Sprout Haven's sunflower walls to stay calm. Hazel's kicks were my anchor, reminding me why I endured this. They didn't know the empire I'd built, the deal that could free us. But as Doreen served dessert, her eyes locked on me, cold and calculating, I felt the air shift. Something worse was coming, and I wasn't sure I was ready. Dessert was served. Doreen's lemon tarts, tart as her mood, and the room grew heavier, like the air before a thunderstorm. I pushed a crumb around my plate, Hazel's kicks urging me to hold steady, but the table's chatter had slowed, replaced by a tense hush. Doreen cleared her throat, her fork clinking against her glass, commanding attention. Everyone turned to her, even Vernon, who sat straighter like a soldier awaiting orders. I felt my pulse in my throat, knowing this wasn't about seconds of pie, her eyes sharp as glass fixed on me, and I braced for the blow I'd sensed coming. "Family," Doreen began, her voice low but deliberate, "is about unity, about upholding our values." She paused, letting the words sink in, her gaze never leaving me. "But sometimes, one of us strays, endangering that." My stomach twisted. Vernon shifted beside me, his hand brushing mine, not in comfort but in warning. Patsy's lips twitched, like she knew the script. Elton leaned back, arms crossed, while Floyd and Irma exchanged uneasy glances. I was the stray, the outlier, and they all smelled blood. "Marla," Doreen continued, "we've been patient, but your behavior, your instability, has gone too far." Instability. The word landed like a slap. Vernon nodded, his jaw tight. "She's been erratic," he said, addressing the table, not me. "Disappearing, moody, not herself. It's the hormones, but it's affecting the family." I wanted to laugh, to scream that my moods were from building Sprout Haven, from dodging their control. Instead, I sat frozen, my hands clasped over my belly. Doreen raised a hand, silencing Vernon. "It's more than that," she said. "You've neglected your duties as a wife, as a mother-to-be. We've decided, for the sake of our grandchild, to take action." My heart stopped. Take action? Hazel was mine, not theirs. She leaned forward, her voice cold. "You're no longer welcome in this family, Marla. We're cutting you off, financially, emotionally, until you prove you can prioritize properly," Vernon added. "It's for your own good and the baby's." Patsy chimed in. "We can't risk her health with your stress." The room spun. Disowned. They were casting me out, framing it as concern, but it was punishment for not bending. Floyd mumbled something about tough love, while Irma looked at her plate. Elton just smirked, like he'd bet on this outcome. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Years of their dismissal, my murals, my teaching, my dreams, crashed over me, and now they wanted Hazel's future too. I gripped the table, my knuckles white, fighting the urge to flip it. They thought they'd broken me, that I'd begged to stay in their orbit. But I wasn't the Marla they knew. Sprout Haven, Quincy's deal, the life I'd built, they couldn't touch that. Still, the weight of their verdict crushed me, their faces a gallery of judgment. I was alone, 7 months pregnant, in a room of strangers wearing family masks. Then as Doreen started to speak again, my phone buzzed in my purse, loud enough to make Irma flinch. I ignored it, but it buzzed again, insistent. Vernon glared, but something in me stirred. Hazel kicked, hard, and I knew I couldn't stay silent much longer. The buzz of my phone cut through Doreen's icy silence, a lifeline in the suffocating room. Vernon's glare burned into me, his lips parting to snap, but I reached into my purse, my hands trembling. Hazel kicked, urging me on as if she knew this moment was ours. I glanced at the screen, Quincy's name followed by urgent call now. My heart leaped. Doreen's voice sharpened. Marla, this is rude. But I stood, my chair scraping the floor, and mumbled, I need a second. Their eyes followed me like hawks as I slipped into the hallway, shutting the door behind me. My fingers fumbled, dialing Quincy, each ring amplifying the pulse in my ears. He picked up on the second one. Marla, you sitting down? Quincy's voice was electric. Bright Beginnings just upped the offer. $350,000 plus a 5-year franchise deal. They want Sprout Haven as their flagship model. You did it. I leaned against the wall, my breath catching. $350,000. A franchise. My daycare, my dream, wasn't just surviving. It was soaring. I whispered, You're serious? He laughed. Signed the prelims today. You're a mogul, kid. Tears stung my eyes, not from sadness but from the weight of it all lifting. I'd built this in secret, against their doubts for Hazel and me. I thanked Quincy, hung up, and stood there, clutching my phone, feeling taller than I ever had. The dining room door loomed. I could have walked out, driven away, but something in me, maybe Hazel's fire, pushed me back in. They were mid-conversation, Doreen's voice droning about family standards, when I stepped in. All eyes snapped to me, Vernon's face twisting with annoyance. Who was that? He demanded, like I owed him an answer. I took a breath, my voice steady for the first time that night. That was my lawyer. Sprout Haven just landed a $350,000 deal with Bright Beginnings. They're franchising my daycare. The room froze. Patsy's wineglass paused midair. Elton's smirk vanished. Doreen's fork clattered to her plate. Vernon laughed, nervous like it was a joke. Your little volunteer thing? Come on, Marla. I met his eyes, unblinking. It's not volunteering, I own it. 40 kids, 5 staff, a waiting list, and now a national chain backing me. Floyd coughed, Irma's jaw dropped, and Patsy's face soured like she'd swallowed vinegar. Doreen recovered first, her voice tight. This is unexpected, but it doesn't change your instability. I laughed, sharp and free. Instability? I built an empire while you called me hormonal. That's not unstable, that's unstoppable. Elton muttered something, but I didn't care. Their verdict, their disownment, was dust now. I'd outgrown their cage. Vernon stood, his face red. You hid this from me? His betrayal stung, but I held my ground. You never asked, Vernon. You never saw me. The truth hung heavy, and for once he had no reply. Doreen's eyes narrowed, calculating, but I was done playing their game. Hazel kicked, my cue to leave. I grabbed my purse, my casserole dish forgotten, and walked toward the door, their stunned silence louder than any words. This was my triumph, not theirs, and I wasn't looking back. I stood in Doreen's hallway, my hand on the doorknob, the weight of their silence behind me like a held breath. My heart pounded not from fear, but from the rush of finally speaking my truth. Hazel's kick spurred me on, a tiny cheerleader in my belly. I turned back, facing the dining room one last time, their faces a mix of shock and calculation. Doreen's eyes narrowed, already spinning a new narrative to save face. Vernon's mouth opened, then closed, like a fish out of water. Patsy's fingers tightened around her glass, her lawyer's brain probably drafting excuses. I didn't wait for their comeback. This was my moment, and I wasn't letting them rewrite it. You know, I said, my voice calm but cutting. I spent years trying to fit your mold. I dimmed my light so you'd see me, but you never did. I looked at Vernon, his betrayal still raw. You called my passion childish, said I was unstable for wanting more. But I built Sprout Haven while you planned my life without asking me. His face reddened, but he stayed silent. I turned to Doreen, her lips pursed tight. And you, Doreen, you framed my dreams as selfish, like I was failing Hazel by being me. But I'm giving her a future you can't control. Patsy shifted, ready to interrupt, but I raised a hand. Save it, Patsy. Your concern was always about keeping me small, just like Elton's smirks and Floyd's silence. I stepped closer, my voice steady. You disowned me, thinking I'd beg to stay, but I don't need your approval. Or your money. Sprout Haven's worth more than your judgment, and so am I. Doreen tried to speak, her voice sharp. Marla, this is dramatic. I cut her off. No, it's honest. You built a family on control, not love, and I'm done pretending it's my fault. The room was still, even Elton's smug grin gone. Irma looked down, Floyd coughed, but no one challenged me. They'd seen the truth in my eyes and it burned. I grabbed my coat from the rack. my movements deliberate. Vernon stood, his voice low. Marla, let's talk at home. I shook my head. There's nothing to talk about. You chose your side and it wasn't mine. His eyes widened, but I didn't falter. I walked to the door, the casserole dish still on the table, a relic of the Marla they wanted. Outside, the night air hit me, cool and clean, washing away their suffocating perfume. I slid into my car, my packed bag in the back, and started the engine. My phone lit up, Vernon's name, but I let it ring. I wasn't going back. Hazel kicked and I smiled, whispering, "We're free, baby girl." As I drove, the weight of their hypocrisy fell away. Sprout Haven was my proof, my power, and no one could take it. I headed to Tilda's, knowing she'd open her door, no questions asked. The road stretched ahead, and for the first time, it felt like mine. Tilda's house was a warm glow against the dark, a beacon after the cold of Doreen's dining room. I pulled into her driveway, my hands still shaky from the showdown, but Hazel's gentle kicks kept me grounded. Tilda opened the door before I could knock, her curly hair a wild halo, her eyes wide with worry. "Marla, what happened?" she asked, pulling me inside. Her living room smelled of cinnamon and coffee, cluttered with books and her son's toy trucks. Myrna and Leland were there too, sprawled on the couch, takeout containers scattered on the coffee table. They weren't just my Sprout Haven staff. They were my chosen family, the ones who saw me when Vernon and Doreen looked through me. I sank into an armchair, my belly heavy, and let the story spill. I told them everything, the dinner's venom, Doreen's disownment, Vernon's betrayal, and Quincy's call about the $350,000 deal. Tilda gasped when I mentioned the franchise, her hands flying to her mouth. "You're kidding, Marla, that's huge!" Myrna, usually quiet, clapped like a kid, her glasses slipping down her nose. Leland leaned forward, grinning. "You walked out like a boss, didn't you?" I laughed, the sound surprising me, and nodded. "I left the casserole, though." Tilda snorted. "Good, let Doreen choke on it." We laughed harder, the tension melting, replaced by a warmth I hadn't felt in years. This was what family should be, messy, real, rooting for you without strings. Tilda made tea and we sat swapping stories. Myrna shared how she'd left a toxic job to join Sprout Haven, drawn to my vision of a place where kids could be themselves. Leland admitted he'd been skeptical at first, thinking daycare was just babysitting, but watching kids like little Otis bloom changed him. "You made that, Marla," he said, pointing at me. "Not them." I teared up, not from sadness, but from the weight of being seen. Tilda squeezed my hand. "You and Hazel are home here, you know that?" I nodded, too choked up to speak. Hazel kicked, like she agreed, and I pictured her growing up with these people, not Doreen's rigid rules. The contrast to the dinner was stark. Doreen's table was a battlefield, every word a weapon to keep me small. Here, the air was light, filled with encouragement, not judgment. We talked late, planning Sprout Haven's future, new art programs, maybe a sensory room for kids like Otis. Myrna sketched ideas on a napkin, Leland hummed a song he'd teach the kids. Tilda promised to babysit Hazel so I could meet Quincy for the deal. This was my tribe, not blood, but bound by belief in me. As I curled up on Tilda's guest bed, Hazel quiet now, I felt safe for the first time that night. The dinner's poison couldn't touch me here. I was already building a new world, one where Hazel and I would thrive. Waking up in Tilda's guest room, sunlight filtering through mismatched curtains, I felt a strange calm, like the world had shifted overnight. Hazel's gentle kicks greeted me, a reminder we were in this together. My phone was clogged with texts, Vernon's pleas, Doreen's curt, "We need to talk," even Patsy's half-hearted, "Let's be reasonable." I deleted them all, my thumb steady, no hesitation. Their words couldn't reach me anymore. Sprout Haven's $350,000 deal was real, my future was real, and I was done letting their voices drown out mine. But freedom came with logistics, and I had to build a fortress around Hazel and me, starting today. I met Quincy at a diner, Tilda watching my back by keeping my location quiet. Over greasy eggs and coffee, Quincy laid out the Bright Beginnings contract, $350,000 up front, plus 10% royalties on franchise profits. It was enough to lease a new place, hire more staff, and secure Hazel's future. I signed, my hands steady, and Quincy grinned. "You're a force, Marla," I smiled, feeling it for the first time. Back at Tilda's, I called a realtor, Bernice, and found a small apartment, cozy with a sunny nook for Hazel's crib. I paid the deposit with Sprout Haven's earnings, not Vernon's money. Each step felt like laying bricks in a wall they couldn't breach. Vernon didn't give up easily. He showed up at Tilda's the next day, banging on the door, his face a mix of anger and desperation. "Marla, this is crazy! Come home!" I faced him through the screen, Hazel kicking like she sensed the fight. "I'm not your property, Vernon, I'm done." He sputtered about family and stability, but I cut him off. "You wanted control, not me. Hazel and I are fine without you." Tilda stood behind me, arms crossed, and he left, tail between his legs. I filed for separation that week, Quincy recommending a lawyer, Nadine, who specialized in protecting mothers. She was fierce, ensuring Vernon couldn't touch my assets or claim Hazel. Doreen tried her hand too, calling with fake tears, saying I was tearing the family apart. I let her talk, then said, "You disowned me, Doreen? I'm just honoring your choice." I hung up, blocking her number. Patsy sent an email, offering legal advice to sort this out. I didn't reply. My boundaries were ironclad, no contact unless it was about Hazel, and even then through Nadine. Sprout Haven became my sanctuary. I worked openly now, no more sneaking. Myrna and Leland handled daily operations while I planned expansions, my belly growing as my dreams did. Parents at the daycare like Fern rallied around me, offering casseroles and baby clothes, their support a shield against the family's noise. I wasn't naive. Vernon might fight for custody, like Doreen might scheme, but I was ready. My new rules were simple. No toxicity near Hazel, no compromises on my worth. Tilda's couch, Myrna's sketches, Leland's songs, they were my foundation now. I touched my belly, whispering, "We're building our castle, baby girl." The aftermath wasn't easy, but it was mine, and that was enough. Hazel was born 2 months later, a tiny warrior, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that seemed to see right through me. Holding her in the hospital, her tiny fingers curling around mine, I felt a purpose sharper than ever. Sprout Haven wasn't just my dream anymore, it was her legacy, a way to show her what it means to stand tall. The $350,000 from Bright Beginnings was a springboard, and I dove in, using it to transform my daycare into something bigger, something that could rewrite the family name they'd tried to chain me with. I wasn't just Marla, the dismissed teacher. I was Marla, the woman who built a haven for kids and a future for her daughter. I poured the funds into Sprout Haven's expansion. We renovated the community center, adding a sensory room for kids like Otis with soft lights and textured walls. Myrna designed an art studio where kids painted murals like I once did, like their messy masterpieces covering the halls. Leland led music classes, his guitar riffs echoing through the building. We opened a second location, then a third, each with the same sunflower walls and open hearts. Parents flocked to us. Fern's blog post had gone viral, and Bright Beginnings backing made us a name. By Hazel's first birthday, Sprout Haven served 200 kids across 3 towns, with a staff of 20. I hired single moms like Gwen who needed flexible hours and teachers like Royce who'd been told their ideas were too much. I built a team of dreamers, proving what happens when you trust passion over control. The impact went beyond the daycare. I started a scholarship fund, covering costs for families who couldn't afford childcare. I named it the Hazel Fund, a nod to my daughter's fire. We hosted community events, story nights, art fairs, where kids and parents connected, no judgment, just joy. Local papers called me the childcare revolutionary, a title I laughed off, but it stuck. I wasn't erasing Vernon's or Doreen's legacy. I was building my own, one that Hazel could carry proudly. Vernon tried reaching out, sending letters through Nadine, claiming he missed his family. I let Nadine handle it, keeping him at arm's length. Doreen stayed silent, her pride too big to bend. Patsy sent a congratulatory note when Sprout Haven hit the news, but it was cold, transactional. I didn't need their approval anymore. Every day I brought Hazel to Sprout Haven, her giggles blending with the kids. She'd toddle through the art room, smearing paint, already a little creator. Tilda, Myrna, and Leland became her village, teaching her songs and stories. I looked at her and saw the future I'd fought for, a girl who'd grow up knowing her worth, not their limits. My family's name, once a weight, was now a canvas, painted with my choices. I'd reclaimed it, not for them, but for us. Hazel's first birthday was a messy, joyful blur at Sprout Haven, kids smearing cake, Myrna leading a wobbly conga line, Leland strumming Twinkle Twinkle on his guitar. I watched Hazel, her tiny hands clapping, her eyes bright as the sunflowers on our walls, and felt a quiet settle in me, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. It wasn't just her birthday, it was a marker of how far we'd come. A year ago I was trapped, hiding Sprout Haven, dodging Vernon's control and Doreen's judgment. Now I was free, standing in a world I'd built surrounded by people who saw me. That night, alone in our apartment, Hazel asleep in her crib, I sat by the window, city lights flickering, and let myself reflect. I'd been chasing validation my whole life, first from my parents, then Vernon, then Doreen. Every mural, every lesson plan, every smile from a kid, I'd hoped it'd make them see me. But they never did. And that used to break me. Somewhere along the way, through Sprout Haven's sleepless nights and Hazel's kicks, I found something better, my own approval. Building that daycare, signing that $350,000 deal, walking out of Doreen's house, it wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving me right. I was enough, not because of their applause, but because I showed up, fought, and created something real. Hazel's giggles, the kids' murals, the parents' trust, they were mirrors reflecting my worth, not their verdict. Vernon's letters still came, Nadine filtering them, but they were just noise now. Doreen's silence, Patsy's cold note, they didn't sting anymore. I'd stopped needing their version of family. Tilda, Myrna, Leland, Fern, they were my people, bound by choice, not obligation. I thought about Hazel, how she'd grow up, knowing she could paint her own path, no one clipping her wings. I'd teach her to trust her fire, to build her own haven, just like I did. That was my peace. Not a finish line, but a steady hum in my chest, knowing I was whole without their nod. I kissed Hazel's forehead, her soft breaths filling the quiet, and whispered, "We're home, baby girl." The city hummed outside, and I knew, no matter what came next, I'd face it as me. Marla, unapologetic. Enough. Have you ever had to break free from someone else's expectations to find your own path? I know how heavy that fight can feel, how it tests every ounce of your strength. I'm Marla, and my journey, from a dismissed kindergarten teacher to building Sprout Haven, from a controlled wife to a free mother, was about discovering my worth. Didn't come from Vernon, Doreen, or anyone else's approval. It came from me. I'd love to hear your stories. Drop them in the comments below. What battles have you fought to define yourself? If my journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to define success on their own terms. You're not alone, and your story matters. Keep building your haven, wherever you are.